Hello. This story is turned up on Yahoo News on the 19th of January 2023. But the story has been going on for a while. It was here in the Guardian from a year ago. Tory MP blames food poverty on lack of cooking skills. Well, this caused a bit of a storm, and indeed the Daily Mail took the storm one stage further by going at Mr. Anderson by this headline: Tory MP who said people only use food banks because they can't cook claimed £220,000 in expenses. I want to point something out to you. Those expenses are for staff, usually. So it says here his biggest cost was on staffing at £165,000, followed by £33,000 on office costs. That might be rent, stationery, all that sort of thing, and £17,000 on accommodation. And he spent £67.57 on hospitality, which means that he actually paid out about £68 for treating somebody. That's one serving in a local French restaurant as far as I know, so that's not a lot on hospitality. And you can say the staffing costs, well, why were the staffing costs £165,000? Because it could be his staffing costs are a bit higher than other people's, but that's not money he's getting. That's money he's giving to his staff. So you could make the argument he's paying them more, or he is not relying on unpaid trainees of various sorts to do his donkey work for him. So that doesn't mean anything either unless I know what he's spending it on. £33,000 on office costs, well, I don't know about that. 17,000, well, says £18,000 on accommodation. I want to explain when, to those of you who might not know about this system, you get an MP, let's say in Cumbria, he has to spend some time in London at the House of Commons in debates, so will be able to claim travel costs to get from Cumbria to London, or he or she may have a flat either being rented or bought for the purpose of being in London during the work hours in London. Of course, there are work hours in the constituency as well. The life of an MP is generally not that wonderful. It's quite hard and involves a lot of travelling and meetings and that sort of thing. Anyone who's worked in a committee of any sort knows how frightful those things can be. Anyway, so they are undercutting his argument by saying he claimed £220,000 in expenses, when it also says here that, just a minute, that his office staffing, accommodation, travel and subsistence claims are higher than the average of 203. Well, look, I don't call... Well, that's 204 really. I don't call 220 so much higher than 203, if that's the average. Because, you see, there will be some who will be claiming 220 because they live at a distance or have other expenses. And there are others who will be claiming 180 because they actually live in London or near enough that they don't need extra accommodation. Or they may be relying on unpaid volunteers more heavily. So it's not that much above the average. So this is not an undercut, but you see people just read the headline, and that's the problem. Now, what Mr. Anderson said, and they've made him look like a real stinker here, haven't they? He was actually brought up in a very poor household. I'm not sure about his history, but his father was a train driver or a labourer of some sort. His childhood was one of quite deep poverty. But they managed, and they didn't take charity. Now, just before I carry on, I will tell you I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I am also on Twitter, Gab and Parler, where I let you know when I'm uploading new videos, and that's at granniopteryx. All the links are in the description. Right, so please help my channel by liking, by sharing and by subscribing. Liking is really the important thing, and you can also help me financially if you want to. Buy me a coffee or one of the other links below. Yeah, but click that like button, please. All right, let's get back to Mr. Anderson. He looks very strict. Now, somewhere he said that when he sat down with constituents in his surgeries, I'll just explain about surgeries. When an MP represents an area, a constituency, they have to periodically, once every week, I suppose, or maybe once every 2 weeks, have to have surgeries. And the constituents come to discuss various problems they might be having in the constituency. And this is two things. First of all, the MP might be able to do something about it. And the second thing is the MP gets first-hand information of the difficulties that are around. And he said people keep coming to him with problems with poverty and food poverty, not having enough to deal with. And he said that a lot of them, they still smoke cigarettes. They're still going on foreign holidays, which I find is incredible. Now, obviously, there'll be budget holidays, not great luxury holidays to Mystique, but it's still expensive. And they still, he said, spend money at the pub in the evenings. So, and he knows this from personal experience. So he knows what he's talking about. And this is what he says. They have a budgeting problem. And the budgeting problem is this, and as you will see from other comments, it's society that's the problem. It's not my fault. It's society. I can't budget because society isn't helping me enough. And he says the point here is that anyone, not just nurses, earning more than £30,000 and are using food banks must have a budgeting problem, he says. I have constituents, armed forces, bin men, bar staff, care workers, bus drivers, pensioners, who can all live on less. He claimed a member of his staff who earned less than £30,000 and did not use a food bank demonstrated his point really well. She's single, she earns less than 30k, rents a room for £775 in central London, which is, difficult for rent, has student debt, £120 a month on travelling to work, saves money every month, goes on foreign holidays and does not need to use a food bank. And then Yahoo News decided not to share the details of the member of staff. What do you mean decided? That would have been probably an actionable offence. But they did find out that this person attended a £20,000 a year private school and is the daughter of a former army chief who holds a CBE. I don't know why they think it's important to say that he has a CBE. It means he's been a good soldier. So what they're trying to do is undercut the story because she attended a good school. Well, possibly in that good school she learned how to cook. And that has nothing to do with what she's living on now. It might have a lot to do with her self-confidence. I can live on this because, I've got backup anyway if I'm in trouble. So that's true. But she does live on this money. And apparently she's not relying on daddy. Anderson's initial remarks were in response to Thursday's Daily Mirror front page, which criticised Simon Clark, who said nurses using food banks need to budget better. Yet, look, there are always going to be people who have problems, who have accidents. But 30k, I just want to point out to people in America, 30k is 30k, well, apart from taxes, 30k straight. I saw a video in which an American was comparing cost of living in America and in Britain, and did say he had to spend, I don't know what, £10,000, it was something outlandish, on medical insurance, which of course is not something that we do in Britain. So you're not considering medical accidents or budgeting for medical situations when you're talking about what you're earning in Britain. Our research shows that people at food banks had on average just £57 a week to live on after housing costs. I want to talk about what you're getting when you can't cook. I want to talk about this problem, £57 a week. So it's not a princely sum, but I want to give you an example from a cleaning lady I used to have when the kids were small. She was called, let's say, Susie. And she had, I think it's a long time ago, but I think what happened was she didn't turn up the previous week because she'd had a heavy cold, and she was telling me in the next week how she suddenly got this yen for chicken soup. So she sent her husband out to the supermarket to buy a few tins of chicken soup. Now, at the time I thought, what? I mean, this may not be a gourmet chicken soup, but you buy a few, chicken thighs in a pack, you buy a couple of carrots, you buy some celery. You throw it into a pot, you boil it up. As I say, it's not gourmet chicken soup. Oh, maybe some barley or some rice, and you put that in. It may not be gourmet chicken soup, but it's a substantial meal anyway. And a couple of packs of chicken breasts, that could be meals for 2 days. Instead, she was spending maybe £5 or £6 or £7 on I think those tins of chicken soup were about £1 each. And I was shocked. I didn't say anything at the time, but that's it. She just didn't know how to cook. Mr. Anderson said at the time, I can't find it now, but he did say that when people come in with that sort of a problem, food poverty, in that way, they are encouraged, compelled, I don't know, to take a course on budgeting and on cooking. And this is the Trussell Trust. The largest food network, food bank providers in the UK. It says the food bank users, there are problems with benefit system, life experiences, ill health, or lack of informal or formal support. And yeah, I'd say informal support would be to do with that girl that I was talking about before, that trainee, or the one that worked for Anderson. She got informal support. She could access informal support from her parents. And then there are problems with the benefit system, change of circumstances, and then maybe three weeks to possibly even 3 months where the benefit system doesn't cough up and you're in trouble. That's true. But Anderson invited MPs to visit a food bank in his constituency to witness a brilliant scheme whereby those in receipt of food parcels have to register for a budgeting and cooking course. We show them how to cook cheap and nutritious meals on a budget. We can make a meal for about 30 pence a day, and this is cooking from scratch, he said. Yes, they might be necessary, as I said, in the woman from the Trussell Trust made some good points, but he has some experience of this as well. And as I said, he was brought up in poverty as a child. There was a book by George Orwell called Coming Up for Air. And the writer of the the narrator of the story talks about when he was a child, which would have been in the early 20s, I suppose, or perhaps a bit earlier. And he was saying that he didn't notice that they were poor, but he did notice they were eating neck of mutton stew more often. Yeah, so his mother was obviously getting the cheaper cuts and making cheaper meals out of cheaper cuts of meat. And that's how people used to think about these things. But nowadays, there's a different attitude. Society is wrong. Not that you go down to cheaper cuts. And Anderson does point out that there is a food bank organisation, and like other organisations, he says, now, I don't know this. I've donated food to food banks, but I don't run them. I don't know anything about them. But Anderson does. He has hands-on experience. He's not some toff brought up in privileged circumstances. He knows what's going on, so I have to take his word for it. And what he says is that the food bank organisations are bloating as official, semi-official and informal organisations very often tend to do. So I have to take his word for that. And what I am talking about is this tendency of people to think that poverty is society's problem. You see, what's going on is this. In the Victorian times, people were poor and starving because they were irresponsible and morally inferior. You know, I mean, this is not a new idea. Aristotle said slaves were slaves because they were morally inferior in some way and just wanted to be slaves. That's Aristotle. And in the 19th century, there was a similar sort of idea there. But we've gone the other way now. What we're saying now is people aren't irresponsible. It's always society's fault, and that's wrong too. And the fact that you get newspapers bringing this sort of thing up, in the Mail, bringing this sort of thing up. This is not an argument, and this is wrong. And we have to be able to at least have a rational argument about what constitutes poverty and who is responsible for it. Right, yeah, that's me finished for today. Till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.